And welcome back once again, everyone, to the Maine State Chamber of Commerce and the Bottom Line, coming to you from the studios of the Williams Broadcasting Group, creative programming for radio, television, and fully diversified podcasts for the web at williamsbroadcasting.net. We come your way twice each month, and you can listen to the Bottom Line live from our studio simply by going to williamsbroadcasting.net and clicking onto the microphone at the upper right-hand corner of that front page that says Listen Live. We hope you'll join us that way. But if you can't, we would encourage you to pick us up on demand. That's right. You know, any app that you normally listen to your favorite podcast on, you can pick up the Bottom Line that way as well. And you can also go to the websites at the Williams Broadcasting Group or the Maine State Chamber of Commerce and get all the information. And you can also listen to the show on those websites as well. Want to welcome everybody once again. I'm John Williams, along with Patrick Woodcock, the president and CEO of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, and I want to remind everybody that today my special guest actually is my co-host, which is Patrick Woodcock, once again the president and CEO of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. We are sponsored by Grant's Kennebago Camps on pristine Kennebago Lake and River, and so we will be hearing more about them later in the program. Patrick, we've had some snow. And we've had some cold temperatures. And I guess that in a lot of ways, I was talking with Katie before we went on the air, and that's good for the economic footprint here in the state of Maine, is it not?
You know, it stayed with me. I remember the LL Bean CEO, just retired, Steve Smith, said that we need the seasons to work in Maine. You know, we need summer, we need the winter, and industries rely on this season, and I love it. I did the snow blow in my driveway about 3 times, which is a record, but it really is, it's a beautiful scenery, and got up to Pleasant on Saturday. It is a beautiful winter so far.
It has been, and it's certainly many of you folks who listen, and certainly you know that I produce ski reports and snowmobile reports on radio stations all over the state of Maine, and you know, this is the type of thing where with this big storm that we just had and the kind of the texture of the snow that has fallen, it's giving us a tremendous base for those industries, skiing and boarding and, of course, snowmobiling. But it also has a great effect on people who love to go out and snowshoe and cross-country ski and that type of thing. You mentioned Pleasant Mountain. What a beautiful mountain to go up and spend time at as well. And all the other mountains are benefiting from this, too. So we kind of raise our hand and say hurrah for the winter as it is. And as I get older, I was telling Katie the cold kind of affects me a little bit more, but I can also remember when I was much younger and I was a ski coach and a racer and a ski jumper, and this type of thing didn't faze me at all. Well, it phases me a little bit more now. But just like you, I was out there snowblowing and then snowblowing again and then snowblowing again after the storm the other day. And
I think there's something said. There's not bad weather. It's bad bad layers, bad clothing. Just got to work. Just got to dress for the elements and
yep.
make sure that clam chowder or hot chocolate.
Oh,
For
absolutely.
you indoors.
Kind of reminds you of that Campbell's commercial, right? Campbell's soup commercial. Absolutely. Well, it's always a pleasure to be here with you. And I think the last time we actually were on the air was about mid-December when we were actually talking about skiing. But here we are back heading into 2026. And as you mentioned before we went on the air today, Patrick, it's been busy. And there's a lot of things to consider. And one of the things that's going to happen today is that we're going to be talking just about what it is that the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, some of the priorities that you have as we move into this new session of the legislature up in Augusta, and the things that we need to be keeping our eye on. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to let you sort of lead the way and get us moving.
Well, John, thank you. It is a real pivotal year for the U.S. economy, and that's no different here there's been a real tension about watching inflation over the last 3 years. That's moderated, but are we going to see interest rates improve where we can start unlocking some of those capital investments, those investments for disposable cars, big ticket items, homes, And our most recent economic forecast signals there are some we've had some strong wage growth, yet we really are forecasting our state to have zero employment growth for the foreseeable future. And it's hard to grow an economy if we aren't growing a labor force. So ultimately, we really do need to create a pro-growth agenda for this year, a pro-growth agenda for whoever is in the Blaine House next year, because our economy really depends on a focus on pro-growth strategy for our state.
And you're absolutely right about that. And when it comes to the workforce, we know the kind of issues that we've been dealing with for a number of years now here in the state of Maine when it comes to that workforce and some of the challenges that businesses of every size have encountered. And the post-COVID era, I hate to even bring up the word, but the post-COVID era has continued to create those challenges. But at the same time, we need to be an economy. We need to be a state that is focusing on finding ways not only to employ the people that are natives to the state of Maine, but also the people that we are encouraging to come here and become a part of who we are here in the state of Maine, and find ways in which that kind of pro-growth attitude and focus continues, so that we can not only grow the businesses that are currently here in the state of Maine, but also be taking a look at what it is, Patrick, and I think you would agree, about finding ways in which we can attract other businesses to come here to the state of Maine. And of course, pro-growth from the perspective of employees is a critically important component in all of that.
Absolutely. The pillars that I see, we need to create a regulatory environment that, yes, reviews significant impacts on the environment, but says yes to projects in a transparent way and in an expeditious way. We're 44th in the red tape rankings. That is not something that I think we should accept. We do need to invest in our core sectors, the marine resources, forest products, life sciences, veterinary. Um, we do have a robust defense industry. Ultimately, the real challenges that I see is, our energy costs. I this is every day that they don't. It's not just that energy costs have gone up; they don't believe their bills right now.
Mm.
And I think we really do need to create an environment that says, oh, this is actually going to make the numbers work, and energy costs are really going to be a barrier to that. And then I'd say housing. You know, um, for those in their 20s, in their 30s, the people you were
Mm.
talking about,
Mm-hmm.
John, that we want to move here,
Mm-hmm.
have household form children here,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to look at the cost of housing. And some regions have really addressed it with opening up the and unlocking the housing production that you need to meet demand. We really haven't seen that in the Northeast. There are some innovative new methods of building housing. We should be saying yes to that. And also, uh, we should be drowning out the NIMBY movement that a minority of voices are saying no, and really explain the economic imperative of saying yes to housing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And there was some interesting. I was watching the news last night, and there were some interesting figures out nationwide. And of course, we can incorporate ourselves into that conversation about the fact that young people today, the 20s and 30-year-olds, and even into their 40s, are having a lot of trouble buying homes. And it's the percentages are way down from that perspective. It used to be up around 65% of those eligible in that age group were buying homes, and they were finding ways in which that they could find ways to cover the expenses and the investment of it. And today that is just not happening on a regular basis, and it's down like 25% from what it was 10 years ago. And so from that perspective, I think you're absolutely right. We have to find ways to make that happen. We have to find ways to make that affordable, and we have to find ways to do it in such a way that we can continue to attract people, once again, to stay here in the state of Maine, to want to live here in the state of Maine, to want to raise a family here in the state of Maine. And that's going to come a lot from initiatives associated with our own legislature and the work that we do here in the state of Maine to make that move forward.
It is an agenda that I think can unite the parties. I do think they both recognize the challenge of the affordability of housing. This is not something that really divides us. It can unite us.
Mm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
we do think that housing can be one of the key areas uh, to bring the legislature together to bring these solutions.
I I agree with you on that, and I think that that's part of the conversation, is it not? Really, I mean, you deal with it almost every single day, and as a chamber director, I don't deal with it as much as you do, but from the perspective of the legislature itself. And knowing fully well that, it's been so polarized here in the state of Maine for so long, as it has been across most of our country, that people just say to themselves, well, it's going to be impossible for anything to get done. But I think you're absolutely correct in saying that one of the things that I think both parties can agree on is the fact that we do need to make it possible for people to live in the state of Maine, to be able to buy a
Yeah.
home here in the state of Maine and to build affordable housing while that's happening.
Yeah, so our prescriptions for addressing our housing situation, one, I do think we need to review whether Augusta needs to sign off on housing. I hear from developers that something is on a brownfield site, very minimal impacts, but they're waiting for a permit from Augusta. And the municipality can review these. We
Hmm.
don't need to review all of these housing projects. Two, our building code, we put, you're always looking at fire safety and efficiency. We've really become we've become unbalanced. And we do need to look at, do we need to have a sprinkler system in every single family? Do we really need to have these elevator specifications? We're looking at whether we can have a single egress, one stairway for buildings if it's designed in a way that recognize fire impacts.
Hmm.
I mean, ultimately, it's our existing building stock that really is our risk for
Hmm.
fire safety. And we have to start saying yes to this new buildings that actually are well advanced beyond our existing building stock.
What is in your opinion, when you talk about these things and you talk about kind of the regulatory process, you know, what is it going to take, in your opinion, for this to move forward from the legislative table to it being more of a municipality responsibility, and how easy will that? I say how easy will that? How difficult will that be? How challenging will that be when it comes to dealing with a state like the state of Maine, where you have so many different municipalities and so many different areas of the state of Maine, and so much, so much conforms around, the environment with these municipalities. And I don't mean to make this too generalized, but I think from that perspective, once you take it away from a single source and you begin to meter it out to all of these other places, and you use municipalities, use the Oxford Hills as an example, you're dealing with a whole different set of how you identify being able to make this work so that we can make that affordable housing ready to be built and get the contractors buying in on it as well.
Well, I do think there is some momentum, and I give Commissioner Loizen with the Department of Environmental Protection some credit for this, of can they issue a permit by rule for housing development?
Hmm.
And if you meet these best practices, you need to file with the state, but you don't need to file an application and wait formal approval. For housing projects, I mean, really, these are absolutely critical for our economy. And if they have best practices that are established in a permit by rule, we can start saying yes more quickly to housing projects.
Hmm.
I do think we need to show up too. I mean, a lot of municipalities, this is just a classic example of, the 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 noisy neighbor getting the attention. There are just a few people showing up and blocking housing projects. And, where I think 80% understand that we do need to have this.
Hmm.
So, although that small minority is showing up, it really doesn't reflect the overall public sentiment. So, I do think regional chambers, state chambers, we do need to start saying, understand, we don't understand everything that's going on in this community. We do understand what's happening in our state, and we're losing our young people. And if we do that, you're going to change the character of the town. You're going to change the character of our
Yeah.
economy.
Yeah.
We got to start saying yes to homes.
And I think, again, your point is well taken, because, I think it's important, for example, that you have organizations, as you just mentioned, like local chambers, regional chambers, that get the word out into the municipality about what it is that we need to do to develop this kind of affordable housing project, if you will, that takes it away from the hands of the legislature, application process, et cetera, and puts it in the hands of the municipalities themselves. And your point is also well taken when it comes to getting that majority support out there, vocalizing this to the municipality and to the legislature as well. Do you think that, for example, if there is more of that and we actually see more people that are in the majority out there vocally talking about this, that's going to help move the process along?
It's a great point, and something we're hoping to create is actually just some facts that people
Mm-hmm.
can use,
Yep.
that they empowered to start being able to talk about housing in a way that based on the economics, based on our state needs, and that they ensure that those on planning boards and those on town councils understand the picture. I think we need to look at the housing project that's proposed, not through the prism of just that building, but it's what it's unlocking for businesses, lawyers.
Absolutely. Tell you what, we're blowing right through this. Let's take a little bit of a break for our sponsor, Grant's Kennebago Camps, and then we'll be right back. I'm John Williams for Patrick Woodcock. You are listening to The Bottom Line, everybody. Great to have you with us here, and we will be right back. Hold on. I've been traveling north from Norway to Grant's Kennebago Camps on the crystal clear waters of Kennebago Lake near Rangeley for over 50 years, and it won't be long before I'm headed back. Fly fishing for native brook trout, brown trout, and salmon in one of the most pristine settings anywhere in North America. What always stands out to me is the stunning beauty of this area filled with wildlife like moose grazing in the Norton Brook area, easily seen from Grant's dining room on the main lodge on the shores of the lake, along with the haunting and beautiful calls of the loon as they cruise by the camp's day and night. It is truly a sportsman's paradise. And if fly fishing isn't for you, then paddle a canoe or kayak, take a refreshing swim, or walk the miles of hiking trails, or even ride your mountain bike on the camp road next to the lake and river. In the meantime, you'll enjoy 3 home-cooked meals a day and stay in cabins that are sitting on the water's edge with screened-in porches where you can relax and enjoy the breathtaking natural beauty of the lake and the mountains around it. Owners John and Carolyn Blunt, they're always there to greet you, and the fishing either on the lake or in the river is simply legendary. Take it from me. A family trip to Grants will change your whole perspective of what an adventure vacation can mean. Go to grantscamps.com for all the information and reservations, and it's very likely that you'll see me there. And welcome back once again, everybody. It's The Bottom Line, coming to you from the studios of the Williams Broadcasting Group. I'm John Williams, along with my longtime co-host, Patrick Woodcock, the CEO and president of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, who happens to be our keynote guest today. But it's always good to be having these conversations with you, Patrick. Anything else about, housing that I think we need to know and we need to get out there to people that we have not mentioned so far in the first half of the program?
I think the other aspect, and you know this from the Oxford Hills region, is there is some innovative construction occurring,
Mm-hmm.
modular homes, doing factory
Yep.
construction.
Yep.
And one big component of our agenda at the chamber is our building code keep up with those innovations. Some
Mm-hmm.
states have moved forward with, say, you can get approval of a design that is constructed
Hmm.
off-site,
Yeah.
and that you don't need to use a municipal official to review that building. And it's really using economies of scale of the construction to create a regulatory environment to it. This is one of those things that can unite us. It's speed. It's a regulatory environment that's saying yes to this innovative construction practice. So
Yep.
that's another area that we're excited to push for. And I do think the legislature recognizes it's time to update our regulations to accommodate this type of construction.
It's interesting, and maybe I can end it on this, and that is that you're absolutely right. We're kind of the heart of the manufactured housing industry in the state of Maine, in the Oxford Hills, as you know. And one of the things that we do each year is that we have for the last 25 years is we do the Oxford Hills, house show, and thousands of people come up there each year to see these beautifully constructed homes from a number of different manufacturers and retailers. And one of the things that they always talk about is being able to work as effectively as they can with the municipalities to make the homes more affordable and to make them more attractive from the perspective of what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And I think it's notable that you talk about that, and you talk about the fact from a regulatory perspective that what's happening is that a lot of these, a lot of what we need to do is bring it into a sort of environment where you just don't have to click so many different boxes to get from point A to point Z. And once that happens, things begin to make more sense for younger people, and it also is probably going to, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, will help to maybe lower some of the costs associated with that whole application process.
Exactly. If we really unlock factory produced home
Yep.
production,
Yep.
that really can lower the cost of production and open up ownership to a whole class of Mainers that are desperately in need of these solutions.
Yep. Absolutely. We'll continue to talk a lot about that, won't we? That's
Absolutely. And I hope we can, the legislature short session, they are robustly in January. Governor's State of the State this past week. Um, our key message to the legislature is, we have a lot of risks in our economy. Let's stay focused
mm,
on economic growth.
yep.
And that's the agenda we're putting forward as a chamber.
Talk about some of are there are some other topics that I know you wanted to touch base on today when it comes to things that you're looking at and dealing with this short session of the legislature. Jump right into anything. I mean, one of the things that has been out there for quite some time is data privacy.
Mm, key issue. I don't know uh, who has who is unfamiliar with the our data is um, being targeted. You know, there is a real issue of what should we do to protect sensitive data, and reasonable people can disagree of exactly the line to should be sensitive data, if that's religious information, racial information, what age we should be protecting
Hmm.
minors. There's some core issues. It cries out for congressional action at the federal level to put basic state. This has become how businesses reach customers, and what we're advocating for is reasonable limitations, but not precluding businesses from utilizing these tools, you know, ensuring that you're reaching people that are in your zip code if you're a hotel or restaurant.
Hmm.
Um, Facebook ads that there's a special for a restaurant, basing on your interest of Googling different destinations that Maine hotels and inns can do targeted ads. And um, we are really focused on ensuring that if Maine moves forward with data privacy, that we replicate what other states have done.
Yeah.
And Connecticut has put a framework together that we think sense. Um, And ultimately, we're trying to make sure that businesses are aware that, when I explain this to some hotels, inns, restaurants, stores, that this is entirely my marketing strategy.
Hmm.
I put
Hmm.
Facebook ads. I'm not putting ads in the newspaper anymore. I'm not. So
Hmm.
it really needs to balance that. We really need to capture as much revenue when people are visiting our state and use these digital tools that have become foundational to reaching.
And we've had this conversation, haven't we, Patrick, before the online, the online, if you will, industry, that has social media that has just opened everything up. We understand, as you just mentioned a moment ago, that certain data and certain privacy laws need to be maintained for that to happen, but not necessarily at the expense of good marketing on behalf of, for example, the state of Maine when it comes to getting the word out about what it is that we have. And in your opinion, what do you think needs to happen from that perspective when it comes to the legislature getting involved in understanding the importance of growing our own business through taking advantage of online and social media opportunities and products that are available out there?
Well, frankly, I think it's too risky for our state to be an outlier on this. We are a tourism economy. When people are
Yep.
visiting, we need them to understand that a local business is available. These national brands have the television ads, they
Mhm.
have the brand awareness.
Yep.
But for a small bookstore or a retail shop, they need to they need to make sure that these new customers are aware that they are available. And the way that they do that is based on your location. They do targeted ads that, hey, if you're interested in road biking, that there's a bike shop that can quickly provide an ad. And that's based on your searches on the internet. That's based on your browsing on a specific website. Taken an education for me of how this actually functions. And I don't think a lot of business owners know the exact mechanics. They just know that it's important. And we need to, at this moment in Maine, when we have this huge affordability crisis, groceries, housing,
Hmm.
let's focus on those issues. You know, Maine um, uh, really needs to recognize that we're part of a global economy, and we just need to focus on the bread and butter issues and not put a regulatory environment that is so dissimilar from the 49 other states.
And I think your point's well taken, and it's almost like, why do we even have to say this? But tourism is the industry here in the state of Maine. I mean, there are other industries, but my point is that tourism has always been a keynote industry here in the state of Maine. We want people to know more about who we are. We want people to understand what are the benefits of being here in the state of Maine, both from the perspective of visiting, but also from the perspective of perhaps getting to know more about the state, what the state has to offer, and sometimes attracting people to come here and live here and become a part of who it is that we are in the state of Maine. And now, in this particular day and age, and certainly I deal with it literally every day with my broadcasting company, there are opportunities to do that. And we're not necessarily, and I think you would agree with me, not necessarily in an invasive way, but in a way in which we are putting out there what it is that's available and what people can either respond to or choose not to respond to.
Hmm. We think about tourism as very in a limited way. Well, it's not just our hotels, it's not just the ice cream shops. For a lot of
Yep.
retail stores, this is hugely important. And trying to make sure that people are increasingly doing um, the big retailers are getting bigger. We certainly respect that. But for, small shops, they need to compete in this, and how they are doing that is with targeted marketing. And we have this misnomer that the technology companies, this new modern economy,
Hmm.
the only way that we allow these companies to compete, our small businesses, is if they can use these digital tools.
That's right.
Um, I do think we've had a lot of success. We've had a lot of Maine businesses show up at the legislature, explain how they use these digital tools. But ultimately, I just don't. I think we just need to have a little humility. It makes sense to join other states rather than creating a out regulatory system for what has been core to
Hmm.
reaching customers.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're kind of moving towards the end of our half hour together. Boy, did that blow by. What anything else that you wanted to mention today? I mean, we could spend a couple of hours talking about this, but are there other issues that we need to be watching and need to be cognizant of when it comes to moving through this short session of the legislature in Augusta?
Yeah, a key issue will be the governor's supplemental, which we expect in a matter of days. And the key economic issue is, will the state adopt some of the federal tax changes that were made? Um, Tax conformity, the term that's used, it's basically whether the state aligns with all tax changes.
Hmm.
And the big elements that we're watching there is create a landscape that encourages companies to invest in research and development. The key aspect is, can you expense those investments in the year that they were incurred? That's been something that Maine has been aligned with back to 1969, formation of the state's tax code. And we are encouraged that we will get the bipartisan support to do that. There's also some states, 38 states have moved through to allow states to reduce their ability through something called a pass-through entity tax. Basically allows you to deduct
Hmm.
your state and local taxes on your federal tax returns. Um, and we are encouraged that we had a positive vote this week in the tax committee to do so. But ultimately, can we create an environment that starts saying yes to this investment? So that's going to be a core issue in the governor's supplemental. She an affordability agenda. That's going to, really question comes down to is, how do you pay for checks going back to Mainers? Do you look to the rainy day fund, which we're always going to be a little cautious about? Is there a way that we can use some state revenues to really get to the heart of this affordability challenge? But the governor's supplemental is going to be a key vehicle for really creating an economic agenda for 2026.
And we will keep everybody posted on that, will we not? Um,
Absolutely.
that's going to be
Absolutely, John.
critically important, and we appreciate. By the way, Patrick, I can't tell you how much we appreciate, even at my local chamber level, knowing fully well that, excuse the expression, you have our back from the perspective of making sure that we have the information that we need to move forward positively. And we do that, and we try to do that. And we try to make sure that we take advantage of that. And so that's going to be critically important to us, for us to stay connected with the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. Anyone out there listening to us today from a municipality or another chamber, keep that in mind. Stay connected to your Maine State Chamber, because they're the ones that are on the front line, making sure that the issues that are critical to our state, the growth of our state, the affordability of living here, is something that they take very, very seriously. Patrick, enjoy the winter weather, okay? And
Always, John. It's great to see the ice shacks out on the lake. I think Sebago's close to being frozen over.
yes,
It's just
it
finally get a real winter for
it
so many
it's
businesses.
wonderful. It really is. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another edition of The Bottom Line. We coming up in just a couple of weeks. That's right. So stay tuned, everybody. I'm John Williams for Patrick Woodcock, reminding you that we are looking out for your best interests. So be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.